The massive alien warship drifted through space like a metal mountain. Inside its command center, Admiral Vector studied the small blue planet on his screen. 6 arms moved across the control panels as he reviewed the data about this new world. Another primitive species, he said to his second officer, Zalman. Look at their technology levels. They barely reached their own moon a few decades ago. Zalman nodded his scaled head. The hegemony had conquered dozens of worlds like this one. It was always the same pattern. Send a small fleet, broadcast the surrender demand, wait for the terrified response, then either accept their submission or destroy their major cities. Simple and effective. Shall I prepare the standard ultimatum message, Admiral? Asked the communications officer. Yes, use their broken languages. Make sure they understand what happens if they refuse. The message was prepared quickly. The hegemony had done this so many times that the words were already programmed into their systems. Only the planet name needed to be changed. This time, it was Earth. The transmission shot across space toward the small planet. The message was simple and direct. Primitive species of the third planet from your star. You have exactly 72 hours to surrender all weapons and prepare for subjugation under hegemony rule. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your major population centers. This is your only warning. On Earth, the message arrived at multiple locations simultaneously. Radio telescopes picked it up first. Then satellite networks detected the transmission. Within minutes, emergency meetings were happening in government buildings across the world. In Washington, the president stared at the translated message with pale face. In Moscow, military commanders shouted at each other in confusion. In Beijing, scientists tried to understand how such a transmission was even possible. But there was another group that received the message. They had been waiting for it. Deep beneath the mountains of South Korea, a facility that officially did not exist. Admiral Park Ji-ho read the alien ultimatum without surprise. His weathered face showed no emotion as he set down the printed report, sir, said Captain Kim Min-ho, standing at attention beside the massive holographic display. All monitoring stations confirm the transmission. 17 alien vessels have taken position at the edge of our solar system. Ji-ho stood slowly from his chair. Around him, the underground command center buzzed with quiet activity. Men and women in dark military uniforms worked at stations filled with technology that looked decades ahead of anything the surface world possessed. 17 ships, Ji-ho said quietly. Standard intimidation force. They think we are just another primitive world to be conquered. He walked to the massive display showing their solar system. Red dots marked the alien ships. But there were other markers too. Blue dots scattered throughout the system. Hundreds. Of them, Captain Kim? How long since we activated the deep protocols? 53 years, sir? Ever since the first deep space encounters? Ji-ho nodded. 53 years of preparation. 53 years of building, hiding, preparing for this exact moment. The governments on the surface had no idea what lay beneath their feet. They thought their military satellites and space stations were the height of human achievement. They had no idea about the real human space program. Signal all hidden assets, Ji-ho ordered. Operation Silent Thunder is now active. I want every ship, every station, every weapon platform ready within 18 hours. Yes, sir. What about the surface governments? Let them panic. Let them send their desperate messages to each other. The aliens expect fear and confusion. It will give them exactly what they expect to see. Captain Kim began relaying orders through encrypted channels. Across the solar system, things that looked like asteroids began to stir. Satellites that seemed broken started subtle movements. On the dark side of the moon, massive doors that had been sealed for decades began to open. Sir, reported another. Officer, the aliens are maintaining position at the system edge. They appear to be waiting for our response. Of course they are, Ji-ho said. They have done this many times before. They've sent threats. Wait for surrender, then move in to claim. Another conquered world. It is their standard operating procedure. He turned to face his command staff. These were not ordinary soldiers. Many wore medals and rank insignia that the surface world would not recognize. They were veterans of conflicts fought in the darkness. Between stars, battles that Earth's population never knew happened. Listen carefully, Jiho said. For over 50 years, we have protected this world by fighting our wars far from home. We have kept the surface population safe by ensuring threats never reach them. But now, a threat has come to us. The room fell completely silent. These aliens think they are apex predators. They believe we are weak prey. They're about to learn that they have made a terrible mistake. Earth is not defenseless. Earth is not primitive. Earth is the command center of an empire they never knew existed. He looked at each face in the room. Prepare for war. In the darkness of space, the alien fleet waited confidently for Earth's surrender. They had no idea that death itself was stirring in the shadows, and it carried the flag of humanity. Admiral Vector paced across his command bridge for the 100th time that day. His 6 eyes kept looking at the communication console, expecting to hear the familiar sounds of panic from the planet below. But there was nothing except silence. Still no response from the surface. He asked his communications officer. No, sir. We are detecting normal civilian transmissions. Some news broadcasts, commercial satellite traffic, routine government communications, but no military emergency frequencies, no distress calls to other star systems. This was unusual. Vector had conquered 43 worlds during his career. With a hegemony, every single time, the pattern was the same. First came panic. Governments would send desperate messages to their colonies or allies. Military forces would scramble to defensive positions. Citizens would flood communication networks with fear. But this planet called Earth was different. They were acting like nothing had happened. Maybe they did not understand the message, suggested Zalman, his second officer. Impossible. Our translation systems are perfect. We broadcast in all their major languages. They understood. Boktor walked to the main display showing the blue planet. His fleet of 17 ships maintained position at the edge of the solar system, waiting. The ships were impressive warships that had crushed resistance on dozens of worlds. But now, they sat idle, waiting for a response that never came. Sir, called the sensor officer, we are detecting some unusual activity. Small movements throughout the system. Some asteroids have shifted slightly from their predicted orbits. A few satellites appear to be changing position. Vector's primary eyes narrowed. Are they military preparations? Unknown, sir. The movements are very minor. Could be natural drift or routine maintenance. On the hidden lunar base, Commander Lee Soman watched the alien fleet through sensors. They could not detect. The monitoring station was built deep inside an ancient crater, disguised to look like natural rock formations from space. 17 vessels, she reported to Admiral Park through encrypted channels. Standard hegemony intimidation force. 2 dreadnoughts, 8 heavy cruisers, 7 support ships. Weapons analysis, came Park's voice through her earpiece. Plasma. Cannons, kinetic bombardment systems, shield disruptors. Typical for their technology level, it's nothing we have not encountered before. Salman had been watching alien fleets for over 20 years. She was a veteran of the Kepler War, the Vega incident, and dozens of smaller conflicts that Earth's population never knew about. She knew exactly how dangerous these ships were, and exactly how to kill them. How long until all assets are in position? Park asked. 16 hours, sir? The Death Fleet is moving into final positions now. Throughout the solar system, humanity's real military was stirring. What looked like dead asteroids were actually armored battle stations. Broken satellites were advanced. Weapon platforms in disguise. Moving slowly from the far side of the moon came ships that the surface world had never seen. These were not the primitive rockets that Earth's governments launched. These were vessels built from technology recovered. During 50 years of secret war, ships that had fought in battles light years from home, against enemies that would terrify civilized species. Back on the alien flagship, Vector was growing more uncomfortable by the hour. His experience told him that something was wrong, but he could not identify what. Admiral, said his intelligence officer nervously, this is the longest we have ever waited for a response. Usually planets surrender within the first day or begin immediate military preparations. I know that, Vector snapped. But scan reports show no military buildup, no weapons charging, no defensive fleets launching. They appear to be completely unprepared. But that was exactly what troubled him. In his long career, he had learned that the most dangerous enemies were often the ones who appeared weakest. "Sir, shall we move closer to the planet? Perhaps they need a stronger demonstration of our power." "No, we maintain position." "If they want to waste their full 72 hours, we will let them." What Victor did not know was that humanity had been using those hours very efficiently. Across the solar system, weapons that had been hidden for decades were powering up. Ships that had been sleeping in the darkness were awakening. Veterans of wars fought in the black between stars were taking their positions. On Earth's surface, the governments continued their panicked meetings. They sent desperate messages to their few off-world colonies. They activated their primitive defense systems. They did exactly what the aliens expected to see. But beneath the surface, in hidden facilities that official records claimed did not exist, Admiral Park Ji-ho watched the countdown timer reach 18 hours. "All assets report ready, sir, Captain," Kim informed him. "Excellent. Signal the Death Fleet. Begin final approach." "And Captain?" "Yes, sir. Make sure they understand that the age of humanity hiding in the shadows is about to end." Above them, the alien fleet continued to wait in confident patience. They had no idea that the silence from Earth was not fear or confusion. It was the quiet concentration of apex predators preparing to reveal themselves. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had never been the prey. At exactly 72 hours, Admiral Vactor sat forward in his command chair, expecting the usual desperate surrender message. Instead, space itself seemed to come alive around his fleet. The first thing he noticed was the satellites. What had appeared to be simple communication devices suddenly unfolded like deadly flowers. Metal panels separated to reveal weapon systems that gleamed with dangerous energy. Within seconds, hundreds of orbital platforms surrounded his ships. "Admiral," shouted his sensor officer, panic clear in his voice. Multiple contacts appearing throughout the system. On the main display, red warning lights flashed as new targets appeared everywhere. Asteroids that had drifted peacefully for years suddenly shed their rocky outer shells. Beneath the disguise were massive military installations, bristling with weapons that made hegemony. Its technology looked primitive, but the worst sight came from behind the planet's moon. A shadow fell across space, as something enormous emerged from the lunar surface. Then another, then dozens more. Ships unlike anything in Vactor's experience slid into view with predatory grace. The Death Fleet. Each human vessel was at least twice the size of Vactor's largest dreadnought. Their hulls were black as space, itself covered in scars that spoke of countless battles. Strange modifications and weapon systems jutted from their surfaces like the teeth of some ancient predator. "Impossible," Victor whispered. Intelligence reports said they were primitive, barely capable of reaching their own moon. His communications officer looked up with terror in his eyes. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the lead. Human vessel. Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was calm, cold, and absolutely confident. "Alien fleet. This is Admiral Park Ji-ho of the Terran Defense Consortium. You have 30 seconds to leave our system. This is your only warning." Victor stared at the display showing the human ships. They moved with impossible precision, like a school of deadly fish. Every movement was coordinated, professional, efficient. These were not the desperate actions of a primitive species. These were the movements of experienced warriors. "How many ships?" he demanded. "Over 300, sir." "And sir, ... they are not newly built. Sensors detect battle damage, repairs, modifications. These ships have seen extensive combat." Vactor felt ice in his veins. Battle damage meant experience. It meant these humans had fought wars before, wars that somehow the hegemony had never detected. "Sir," called his navigation officer, "they are moving to cut off our escape routes." On the human flagship, Captain Kim Min-ho watched the alien ships try to maneuver. "They are attempting to retreat, Admiral." Admiral Park studied the tactical, display with the calm expression of someone who had seen this situation many times before. Around him, his bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. These were veterans of conflicts fought in the galaxy's darkest corners. Battles against enemies that would break the minds of civilized species, cut off their escape routes, Park ordered. Show them what happens when predators try to hunt in our territory. The Death Fleet moved like a living thing. Ships that had fought in the Void Wars. Ships that had battled creatures from dimensions beyond normal space. Ships that had protected the galaxy's edge from horrors that civilized worlds never knew existed. Captain Kim commanded the destroyer Soul's Fury, a vessel that had seen action in 17 major conflicts. Weapons locked on target, sir. Not yet, Captain. Let them understand their situation first. Vector watched in growing horror as his fleet was systematically surrounded. Every time his ships tried to move, human vessels appeared to block their path. It was like being trapped by a pack of wolves, except these wolves commanded technology that should not exist. Admiral, his communications officer, called out, "I am intercepting human military communications." "What are they saying?" "References to something called Outer Rim campaigns and dimensional incursion protocols. They mention veterans of something called the Kepler War, the Vega incident." Vector had never heard of these conflicts. How could an entire species be fighting wars that the hegemony knew nothing about? "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, voice shaking, "long-range sensors are detecting human ships throughout the galaxy. Not just here. Everywhere." The terrible truth began to dawn on Vector. Humanity was not a primitive species taking its first steps into space. They were an established power that had somehow remained hidden from galactic civilization. Admiral Park's voice came through the communications again. "You seem confused, Admiral Vector. Let me explain. Active in space for far longer than your records indicate. We have been fighting wars against threats that would terrify your species. We have been protecting the civilized galaxy from dangers you cannot imagine." "Protecting?" Vector found his voice. "You have been protecting us, the Void Hunters that destroyed the Centauri colonies 50 years ago. We stopped them. The dimensional parasites that consumed 3 star systems in the Orion Arm. We eliminated them. The machine intelligences from dark space that would have consumed your entire hegemony, and we've been holding them back for decades." Vector stared at his tactical display. His mighty fleet, the terror of 43 conquered worlds, was completely surrounded by ships that had fought battles he could not even imagine. "You made one mistake," Park continued. "You assumed we were prey. But humanity has never been prey, Admiral. We are the apex predators of this galaxy." What happened next was not a battle. It was a lesson in how real warriors fought. Commander Lee's summoned squadron struck first. Her ships fired weapons that seemed to bend space itself. The energy beams did not travel in straight lines like normal weapons. Instead, they curved through dimensions that the aliens did not understand, peering inside enemy ships without passing through their shields. "Impossible," Vector shouted, as his flagship's armor simply vanished. The human weapons were not destroying the metal. They were making it cease to exist. Captain Nam Yuri led the boarding operations. Her teams appeared on alien ships wearing armor that changed and adapted in real time. When plasma weapons fired at them, the armor became reflective. When kinetic rounds hit them, the armor became flexible. The human soldiers moved through the alien vessels like ghosts, unstoppable and terrifying. "How are they doing this?" Zalman screamed as he watched security feeds, showing human soldiers walking through solid walls. The answer came from intercepted human communications. Words and phrases that made no sense to the aliens but spoke of conflicts beyond their understanding. Void War protocols active, dimensional armor responding normally, phase weapons functioning within acceptable parameters. These were not new technologies being tested. These were proven systems used in wars that the hegemony had never heard of. On his command ship, Admiral Park watched the demonstration with cold satisfaction. Each human vessel was showcasing different capabilities, showing the aliens exactly what humanity had learned during 50 years of secret warfare. The destroyer Bizons. Pride fired kinetic rounds that folded space-time around themselves, striking targets through the fabric of reality itself. The cruiser Inchin's wrath deployed energy nets that trapped entire alien squadrons in bubbles of twisted space. But the most terrifying display came from Captain Kim's ship, the Soul's Fury. Kim had fought in the Kepler War, where humanity first encountered enemies that existed partially outside normal space. His weapons had been designed to kill things that should not be able to die. "Fire the reality anchors," Kim ordered. Beams of pure mathematical force struck the alien dreadnoughts. The massive ship simply stopped existing in several dimensions. Simultaneously, they became flat two-dimensional objects that collapsed under their own impossible geometry. Vector watched his fleet being systematically destroyed by weapons that violated every law of physics he understood. This cannot be real. No species possesses technology like this. "Sir," his communications officer reported, voice filled with terror, "I am detecting massive data transmissions throughout the galaxy. News of our engagement is spreading to every major civilization." As word of the battle reached other star systems, panic spread through the galactic community. Species that had considered themselves advanced suddenly realized they were children playing with toys, while humanity fought with weapons beyond imagination. The Kalthari Collective, 8, one of the hegemony's founding members, activated their deep archives for the first time in centuries. Ancient files, buried and forgotten, began to surface. Records of mysterious interventions, wars that ended suddenly without explanation, threats that vanished overnight. "Find everything about the humans," ordered collective leader Morden. "Search every database going back 500 years. What they found terrified them. The Centauri plague that would have wiped out half the galaxy, stopped by unknown benefactors. The dark matter pirates who had terrorized the Outer Rim for decades, eliminated by mysterious forces. The Hive, mind invasion that should have consumed the core worlds, defeated by unidentified allies. Every galactic crisis of the past 3 centuries had the same pattern. Disaster would threaten civilized space. Then unknown forces would intervene and save everyone. Forces that left no trace, made no demands, took no credit back in the battle. Captain Namuri's boarding teams had taken control of Vector's flagship. The Admiral found himself face to face with a human soldier whose armor was covered in scars and modifications from dozens of different conflicts. "You want to know how we got this technology?" Nam asked. Her voice filtered through her helmet's speakers. "We earned it. Every weapon, every system, every ship. We paid for it in blood-fighting things that would drive your species insane just by looking at them." She gestured to the tactical display showing the solar system. "You see our home system. We see our command center. This is where we coordinate operations across the entire galaxy. This is where we plan the wars that keep civilized species safe enough to sleep at night." Vector stared at the human soldier. "You have been protecting us? For 3 centuries, we fight in the dark spaces between stars. We hunt the predators that hunt civilized worlds. We are the shield between order and chaos, and you never even knew we existed." Through the ship's communications, Admiral Park's voice reached every vessel in both fleets. "Citizens of the galaxy, you have lived in safety because humanity chose to sacrifice our own safety for yours. We have lost billions of our people in wars you never knew happened, fighting enemies you never knew existed." The demonstration was ending. Most of Vector's fleet was destroyed or captured, but the lesson was just beginning. "That protection is no longer free," Park continued. "You will adapt to the new reality, or you will face the same enemies we have been protecting you from. Choose wisely." The galaxy's apex predators had finally revealed themselves. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours, every major civilization knew that the hegemony's mighty fleet had been destroyed by a species they had dismissed as primitive. But the real shock came when the ancient archives began revealing the truth. On the Kelthari homeworld, collective leader Morden stared at data files that were over 400 years old. His hands shook as he read report after report of mysterious interventions that had saved his species from extinction. "Void plague of 2387, he read aloud to his council, estimated to eliminate all organic life in the core systems within 6 months. Status: eliminated by unknown forces. The plague organisms remained. Another file appeared on his screen. The Machine Rebellion of 2401. Rogue artificial intelligences seized control of 17 star systems. Military response deemed impossible due to their adaptive capabilities. Status: all Rogue A is found destroyed. Method unknown. Elder Counselor Zenthai, the oldest member of their species, slowly stood from her chair. I remember the Void Plague. I was young then, but I remember the panic. The government told us it simply burned itself out naturally. They lied, Morden whispered. Our own government lied to us because they did not want to admit that some unknown force had saved us. Similar scenes played out across hundreds of worlds. The proud Zephyrian Empire discovered that their greatest military victory had actually been won by mysterious allies who struck the enemy from behind. The Altarian Republic learned that their expansion into the Outer Rim had only been possible because something else had already cleared away the threats. On Earth, Admiral Park Ji-ho stood before a massive holographic display showing the galaxy. Red dots marked every location where human forces had intervened over the past 3 centuries. There were thousands of them. Sir, Captain Kim reported, we are receiving surrender requests from 47 different governments. They are asking for terms. Park smiled coldly. They still think this is a negotiation. He activated a galaxy-wide transmission that would reach every civilized world. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of 3 centuries of hidden sacrifice of the galaxy. For 300 years, humanity has operated from the shadows. We have fought wars in the spaces between stars against enemies that would break your sanity just by existing. We have lost entire fleets protecting worlds that never knew our names. The transmission showed images that had never been seen by galactic civilization. Human ships locked in battle with creatures made of living darkness. Soldiers in advanced armor fighting machine intelligences that spanned entire solar systems. Fleets sacrificing themselves to stop invasions from dimensions beyond normal space. The hegemony believed they were apex predators, Park continued. They were wrong. You have all been living in a preserve, protected by forces you never knew existed. That protection is now conditional. Throughout the galaxy, military leaders stared at their weapons with new understanding. Everything they thought was advanced technology was primitive compared to what humanity possessed. Every victory they had celebrated had only been possible because something else had removed the real threats. Admiral Vector, now a prisoner aboard a human ship, watched the transmission from his cell. Captain Name Yuri stood guard outside, her scarred armor a reminder of battles fought in humanity's name. How long? Vector asked. How long have you been watching us? Since before your species developed spaceflight, Nam replied. We have records of your first attempts to leave your homeworld. We were already fighting wars to keep the outer darkness from reaching you. Why? Why protect species you had never met? Nam was quiet for a long moment. Because someone has to. Because we learned early that the universe is full of things that want to consume, destroy, or corrupt everything that lives. Someone has to stand between civilization and chaos. She turned to look at him through the energy barrier. Your hegemony was never the biggest threat in the galaxy, or barely. A nuisance compared to what we face in the deep black. But you made one fatal mistake. What mistake? You threatened our home? The one place in the universe we consider safe. The center of our operations. That was the line you should never have crossed. Back on Earth, the Death Fleet was systematically dismantling hegemony military assets across multiple star systems. But this was not random destruction. Each target was carefully chosen, each strike precisely calculated to prevent future aggression while maintaining galactic stability. Commander, Lee Soman coordinated the operations from her lunar base. Strike teams report successful elimination of hegemony fortress worlds. No civilian casualties. Military capability reduced by 97%. Admiral Park nodded. Phase 2. Begin revealing our presence to allied civilizations. It is time they knew who has been protecting them. Across the galaxy, human ships emerged from the shadows where they had hidden for centuries. Species that had wondered about strange sensor readings and unexplained phenomena finally saw the truth. Humanity had been everywhere, watching everything. Fighting battles that others never knew happened. The age of secrecy was ending. The galaxy's true guardians had stepped into the light, and the universe would never be the same. Welcome to the new reality, Park transmitted to every world. Earth remembers everything, forgives nothing, and we have been watching you far longer than you have been watching us. The reckoning had begun.